there, guys and girls. So I'm going to get started with the slides. We're going to talk about shark conservation, and we're even going to do a little virtual junior research expedition, kind of like how it would be if you're with us out in the field studying sharks. All right, so a little bit about Shark Team One. So Shark Team One is a global shark conservation organization, and we protect marine ecosystems. We focus on endangered species, and we do citizen science expeditions, which are expeditions where students and parents and teachers come out with us into the field, and we teach them what we do, and they actually become scientists for the week or however many days we're out. So a little bit about myself. So I'm a conservationist. I'm also a photographer, a writer, filmmaker, researcher. And as I mentioned, I specialize in endangered species. And of course, I'm the founder of Shark Team One. In so doing, I also do work for other nonprofit organizations when we partner, such as National Geographic and some other organizations you may have heard of like that. So as a kid, here's this kind of silly photo of me over here hugging the dolphin. As a kid from a very early age, I grew up on the coast of Maine with my parents, and they had a boat, and we learned all about the ocean as a tiny kid from about 10 years old on. And I was exploring tide pools, and I went on to write articles about conservation even in the 4th grade. So I just mentioned this because some of you out there might be around that age. And so if you have things that interest you now, go ahead and follow your dreams, keep being interested. And you may just be doing what you love now, jump ahead, decades later. All right, a lot of times people ask me, what's your favorite part of being the president and founder and a researcher with Shark Team One? So there's a lot of work in the office that happens to do with what I do, but my favorite work, of course, is being out in the field and studying the marine animals. So here's some photos of me doing this so you can see what it's like when I do my favorite stuff out in the field. So we have a picture of me with a great hammerhead shark, with a manta ray, with a tiger shark, and on the bottom there, I'm outplanting coral down in Key Largo. So these are some things that I might be doing when I'm out in the field and are the most fun part of my job, I would say, and my favorite. All right, so we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about sharks. So sharks have been on the planet for 450 million years, and they've evolved during that whole time, and they're pretty much a perfect predator. We need sharks in the ocean to keep them in balance. They basically keep fish populations in balance. And we know that killing sharks hurts fisheries, so we don't want any overfishing to happen for sharks. They're also very valuable to dive tourism. For instance, when we go out and research sharks, we're supporting local fishermen that used to be fishermen, but now they're taking us out in research boats and helping us. So dive tourism is a way to sort of flip what fishermen do, for instance, and kind of prevent overfishing and support local families. So I don't know, you may have heard sort of in the news or whatever, but sharks are in trouble because their populations plummet because of overfishing and some other stressors. So unfortunately, tens of millions of sharks are being killed every year, mainly for their fins and sometimes for their meat. So because they reproduce so slowly, they really can't recover from fishing pressure like other fish. Some of the species may take even 20 years to reach maturity. So because of all this, shark populations are now unfortunately collapsing around the world. So that's why I do what I do and why other nonprofits like Shark Team One work to create awareness and to go out and study sharks. So scientists figure that about 1/3 of all sharks, skates, and rays are threatened with extinction. So that's really bad. So here's just a photo that I got on a reef out in the Bahamas a few weeks ago, actually, when we were studying sharks. And it points out that this is a very healthy reef. You can see the live coral, you can see a nice big grouper there, and you can see the shark in the distance. So it's not scary that the shark is there. The shark is there. He's actually like, he might eat a fish that's been hurt. He keeps the fish populations in check, and he creates a healthy reef. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what does it mean to be an endangered species. So it's basically any type of plant or animal that's in danger of disappearing forever. And this is actually some stamps of some different species. And of course, we're focusing on shark species. This slide is a little bit about exactly the shark species that we're studying and how extinct they may be in the future. Some of the species are near threatened, some are endangered, and these are terms that we use to determine after studies are done, how long they have left. All right, I'm going to have a quick drink of water, and we're going to talk about this next slide. Okay, so one of our most well-known programs is called the Endangered Whale Shark Conservation Program. So this slide shows you a little bit about what we'll do out in the field. And there I am down in the corner. There's some pictures of our team. And we actually go out in the field and we swim with and study these gigantic whale sharks off the coast of Mexico as they're migrating through each year. Something else we do is we do a lot of student mentorship, programs like this, like we're talking to you today, school seminars, even college, undergraduate, and graduate career projects. So that's just some samples of those over the years. And here we are again. This young lady, her name is Amaya, and she grew up in off Cancun, Mexico, on an island called Isla Mujeres. And she has been working with us for years. She basically grew up with us. And she's now a whale shark guide. And she takes tourists out and she helps us on the expeditions. I think she's about 16 in this photo, and she's about 19 now. And it's just a cool shot. And I wanted to point out how we're supporting families in Mexico and, how the program has grown over the years. Here's Amaya in the foreground and another student. We work with Disney Conservation Fund a lot for this program. And here they are. It's a picture of them in the field doing something we might do on one of these citizen science expeditions. Here they are collecting plankton samples because whale sharks eat plankton. So we're looking at what exactly they're eating to learn more about, is their food source being impacted by climate change? Do they have enough food? Are they going to remain in this area? And that type of thing. And in the meantime, these students have probably never seen, Amaya has, but the student in the background hasn't seen this type of study before. He probably hasn't seen fish eggs like this. So it's a really cool thing for students to experience this. All right, one of the really interesting things about whale sharks is their size. They're so big. So on average, we see about 40 whale sharks. They're about 40 feet long, but they can get up to be 55 feet long, which is about the size of a school bus. Can you imagine that? Another very interesting thing about whale sharks are that they live to be very old. They can live to be 70 to 100 years old. Many of the sharks I work with down off the coast of Mexico, I've seen for about 10 years. Sometimes their lifespan's a bit shorter, unfortunately, because of the stressors that we'll talk about later. But these are just some really cool, interesting facts about them. Another interesting thing about whale sharks is most sharks that you think of, will eat other fish. Whale sharks are filter feeders. So they can process more than 1,500 gallons of water an hour through their gills. So they're sucking in fish eggs, tiny crustaceans, the plankton, the phytoplankton, and this is how they're eating. So it takes a lot of plankton to feed this giant fish. On the one side here, the photo that's green and red was a sort of an infrared photo that we managed to take. And so then the red is all the fish eggs that shark is literally sucking in. They make a suction movement with their mouth, and that's how they eat. So unfortunately, as I was mentioning, there are issues to do with the ocean in the area where the whale sharks are, and also the oceans around the world. But some of the stressors that impact these whale sharks are ship strikes. They may have loss of food resources due to climate change. Unfortunately, there is shark finning, not so much right off the coast of Mexico because we've managed to create ecotourism there, but in other parts of the world. And there may be inadequate marine protected areas, even if they are protected. So we need more of those. And of course, marine debris and plastic pollution is a big problem and a cause of death in both whale sharks and then, of course, in marine mammals, whales too. So whale sharks are in decline worldwide, and that's why we're out there studying them and trying to help them. The calculated losses, scientists think that there's greater than 50% species decline over the last 75 years, and so they're endangered. This is an example of a photo we took in the field of what can happen to whale sharks with a ship strike, for instance. And we are studying exactly how this impacts their behavior. But here's a whale shark with a dorsal fin that's been, literally like beat up by a ship. So another way we're studying whale sharks is we're virtually tagging them. We're not actually physically hurting them by putting in the tag, but we're virtually tagging them by tracking them, where they're going with GPS. We are using something called artificial intelligence, partnering with Microsoft to take their fins and being able to identify them. And this is a project that is helping us speed up volunteer time because we can run it through a computer instead of volunteers looking at hundreds of thousands of pictures of whale sharks and trying to figure out who's who, so to speak. A specific area of the whale shark that we look at to determine which whale shark is which and if we're seeing the same one year after year is an area by their left pectoral fin that is almost like a human fingerprint. So if you look at your finger, all of you guys out there have different fingerprints. Well, all of the whale sharks out there have different fingerprints, so to speak, because they have a different pattern of spots by their left fin. And that helps us ID them. And when we have databases and stuff, we can see, we have graphs of which sharks are coming for which year, which ones we've seen, and things like that. So what can you do to help sharks? Just speak up for sharks. Like say you watch this PowerPoint and you go, hey, that was pretty cool. And those whale sharks are pretty special looking. I want to help. So what would you be doing? So you would be becoming a shark advocate by doing things like supporting efforts to create sanctuaries, stopping overfishing, supporting legislation that stops things like trade of shark fins. And you could visit a shark, like what we do, by taking citizen scientists out with us, because you're supporting responsible shark tourism at that point. A few more things: you find out about threats facing sharks, create a positive image for sharks. So instead of, people thinking they're mindless, eating machines, now you know that there are sharks out there that are filter feeders and that sharks are needed for healthy reefs and things like that. So because you know these things, you can inspire your friends to help save endangered shark species. Or you could participate in community programs. You could follow a career in marine biology or conservation or underwater photography, filmmaking, any of these things that help or are the marine sciences. Or you can join us. Here's a little boy called Maro doing the plankton experiment again. I wanted to talk a little bit about careers in the marine sciences. So depending on your ages out there, this may be a long way off, but you can still start thinking about it. Or actually, you guys, I know your ages out there. So you've got a while before you start thinking about going to college and things like that, but we can still briefly talk about this. So here we are out in the field, what we might be doing on a day. Here's dive tanks. Here we are with clipboards, and we're taking notes and doing all our data collection in the field. So in order to work in marine biology, you would need to be interested, probably even at this age that you're at now, in science, math, technology. Later on in high school, you might become interested in something like engineering, chemistry. You may also like to write. I do a lot of writing, whether it's writing grants or articles, for outreach and things like that. And if you love the water, obviously, if you like snorkeling, or when you get a bit older, you can learn how to scuba dive. If you like photography, and most of all, you would have a burning desire to explore, save species, and basically to help change the world around you, which is a really cool thing to do in life. And these are just some sample colleges that would be that you would go to later on. And there are also some magnet high schools that have these types of programs. So if you guys are interested, we have a Google mini project that I can send to your teachers, and you actually do some essays for us, and you do a few questions, you do a drawing. We ask you to create a little 2-minute video, and it's all about whale sharks, and it's a great learning experience. And we use it for students your age and a little bit older too, who come with us in the field. They do it in advance. And we also use it for students who just want, you get a certificate afterwards, and you get 8 hours of community service. So if your school program calls for that, or if that's something you want to do, your teachers could contact me afterwards. It's really fun. And then in particular, we use the art a lot in outreach. And so, we'll get a picture of you holding your art, and it just shows how it's amazing, the art that we get. And so I just love that part of it. All right. And to wrap up, I just want you all to think about, by watching this PowerPoint presentation, and when you start to think about things you can do to help whale sharks or sharks, the environment, what you can do for Earth Day in general, like, recycling, things like this, by even just thinking about it, and then you start to do a few things, maybe a beach cleanup, things like that. So your actions are, helping you get the point across and helping you protect things. So I use these 3 words a lot in my life, and at the end of the presentation here. So remember, think, act, and protect. So you're thinking about it, you're then doing it, and by so doing, you're protecting. And so there you are. All right. Well, I think we're going to go to some questions, and I just wanted to thank you all. Here's my contact information there, and I hope to see some of you doing maybe the virtual school project with me, or out in the field, or just that you took away from today something that you learned that was interesting. And I hope you all have a great Earth Week. And we'll go to some questions.
Wow, great job, Angela. Thank you so much. That was really educational. It was like a mini Shark Week that we were experiencing right there. That was really cool. So again, if you would like more information on Angela's organization, then please see this link above. Feel free to write it down. It is sharkteam1.org. So please visit that website if you want more information. And actually, now we have time to ask Angela some questions. So we have a few questions here from the session. We have a lot of questions for you. So we have a little bit of time, which is great. So Angela, feel free. You don't have to rush through these questions. You can answer them comfortably. So, okay, here's the first one. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. This is actually a really good question. How do you calculate the age of a shark? How can you tell?
Well, that is a really good question. Well, sometimes it's done by size. A lot of times it's a lot of guessing. I don't know if anyone really can be perfectly accurate with the size without killing it, unfortunately, because then they can do some sampling of the tissue and the spinal column, the insides of it. But anyway, so basically by the size.
Okay, so by the size. Okay, and then this is another good question. So you said sharks were around for 450 million years. Were they around before dinosaurs, or are they dinosaurs?
That's a really good question. You guys are really coming up with some good questions here.
They're good.
Very good. Yeah, they are. So interestingly enough, I had a slide where I was going to show you guys exactly that. I don't know if I can come up with it right now, but it's the, hold on, I'm going to have to look this up. I don't know if I can.
Yeah, don't worry.
I think it's the Paleozoic period. So they were around before the time of the dinosaurs, and I think it's the Paleozoic period, but I'm going to have to get back to you on exactly.
Okay, so there you go. Sharks were around before some dinosaurs, we'll say, right?
Right.
Okay, so Angela, here's another question. So this is a little more of a personal question. So do you remember the first time that you ever saw a shark in the wild? And were you scared? what kind of shark was it?
Okay, very good question again. So I do remember, and it was a whale shark, ironically. So I just briefly was off the coast of Belize, and I was scuba diving, and we had been out in the field for like 2 weeks and hadn't seen any whale sharks, and we really wanted to see one, and we had flown a long way to get there to see them. And so finally, on the last day of diving, really, really deep at about 80 feet, I see this tiny, like young whale shark. And it was just so beautiful. And the streams of light were coming down through the deep water.
Oh,
And
wow.
I saw that little shark there, and it really just looked like some kind of little sign or angel to me. And in fact, that's the point where I said, like, okay, I'm going to do something to save these amazing animals. So yeah, I do remember, and it was really special to me. So great question.
Wow, I could picture that. That was really good.
That's good.
It's like a movie.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay, Angela. So these are really good questions. So
I know.
do whale sharks have blowhorns? Blowholes, sorry. Do whale sharks have
Blowholes. And
blowholes like whales?
right, another good question. No, they don't. So even though there's whale in the name, I don't know why they ever were called that, but I think just because they're so big, somebody put whale in the name. But no, they don't have blowholes.
Okay, because of the size, right? Yeah, as big as a school
I
bus.
think so. Yeah.
That's really incredible. So, okay, and then I think this will be the last question. So, whale sharks are filter feeders. How important are filter feeders for the ecosystem? And what if we had no filter feeders like whale sharks?
Okay, that's a really good question, and a little bit harder to answer than sharks that eat fish, because they clearly, keep the fish populations in check and things like that. So we don't really know, honestly, how they're exactly important. We know that they're probably serving a purpose because they're eating, the plankton. It's even at a tiny, tiny level. So it's probably the same as sharks that eat meat. And the fact that they're eating the tiny plankton, they're eating a lot of the fish eggs. So they're keeping the snapper populations in check because they're eating those eggs. So
Oh, wow.
it's not quite so easy to discern as the meat eating, fish eating sharks. But we do believe that they're definitely serving that purpose.
Wow. Well,
Good, very good question. Very
yeah,
like
these are really
amazing
good
questions,
questions, right?
guys.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Angela. We're really happy that you took the time to teach us all about sharks and whale sharks and their importance in the ecosystem and in our oceans. So if we wanted to help and if we wanted to make a difference, then what would be the best way that we could do that?
Sure. Well, some of those things I talked about, tell your friends about sharks. You can come out with us into the field. You could do the mini project I mentioned, which is really simple. I just send the teachers the Google links and they can put that into their curriculum. Yeah, things like that would be really
Okay,
helpful.
perfect. Yes, I'm sure the teachers would be very interested in that little experiment. That would be great. We'll make sure
Yeah.
to get it out to them. Okay, so that wraps up the Q&A time for today.
Great.
Thank you very much, Angela. We really appreciate it.